Sean O'Malley is breathing a sigh of relief because he didn't get the fight he once wanted. Back when both he and Ilia Topuria held UFC titles, O'Malley was publicly calling for a blockbuster champ versus champ bout. At the time, it sounded like a dream matchup, flashy, undefeated, high stakes. But with how things played out at UFC 317, O'Malley is now glad it never happened. Topuria, who recently moved up to lightweight, demolished Charles Oliveira with a vicious first-round knockout to become the new UFC lightweight champion. Watching live during a watch-along stream, O'Malley's reaction said it all. "Holy F, thank God he didn't accept my call-out. Ilia needs to fight Islam." Reflecting on his past call-out, Sean added with a laugh, "After I beat Cheeto, I called out Ilia, and he got scared and ran to 155. No, I'm just kidding. Thank God the UFC didn't make that fight." Since losing his own belt to Merab Dvalishvili, O'Malley has dropped 2 straight fights and is currently without a scheduled return. Meanwhile, Topuria's star continues to rise quickly. O'Malley is now joining the chorus of voices calling for Topuria versus Islam Makhachev, a potential superfight fans are already dreaming about. But with Makhachev reportedly preparing for a move up to welterweight and a rumored fight with Jack Della Maddalena, O'Malley believes Topuria might need another high-profile opponent in the meantime. His pick? Ilia versus Paddy is the fight to make, simple as that. While the UFC hasn't confirmed any plans yet, Topuria versus Pimblet is one of the most talked about matchups following their face-off at UFC 317. With O'Malley out of the title picture for now, he's joining the fans and watching how Topuria's next move unfolds. Grateful he's not the one standing across from him. The UFC is officially returning to Abu Dhabi for UFC 321, with the event locked in for October 25, 2025, at the Etihad Arena. This marks the continuation of a yearly tradition that began in 2019, where the UFC brings a major numbered pay-per-view event to the capital city of the United Arab Emirates. The announcement was made through the UFC's social media channels, along with a call for fans to register their interest for updates on ticket sales and the official fight card lineup. Abu Dhabi holds a special place in UFC history, not just as a consistent international host city, but also as a financial and operational lifeline for the promotion. The UAE's investment into the UFC dates back to the early 2010s, but the relationship became even more critical during the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2020, when the world shut down, Abu Dhabi opened its doors and provided the infrastructure for what would famously be dubbed Fight Island, a biosecure bubble that allowed international fighters to compete while most global sports leagues were inactive. Since then, the UFC has prioritized Abu Dhabi with some of its most important events each year. Each visit to Abu Dhabi has delivered a blockbuster main event. In 2023, it was headlined by the highly anticipated rematch between Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski, a champion versus champion clash that drew global attention. In 2024, the spotlight was on Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway, a featherweight bout with major title implications. Both cards solidified Abu Dhabi as a go-to location for high-stakes fights, particularly ones involving international stars with massive global fan bases. As for what UFC 321 might offer, nothing has been confirmed yet aside from the date and venue. However, speculation is already swirling. One potential headliner is Islam Makhachev versus Jack Della Maddalena, especially since Makhachev has made it clear he wants to move up to welterweight and pursue a second belt. If that matchup gets booked, it would mark yet another title fight for Makhachev in Abu Dhabi, cementing him as a perennial main event presence in the Middle East. Another likely candidate for the card is Tom Aspinall, who recently became the undisputed UFC heavyweight champion following Jon Jones' retirement. UFC President Dana White has already hinted that Aspinall's first title defense could come soon, and Abu Dhabi would make an ideal international stage for that bout. If Cyril Gane ends up being the opponent, it sets up a compelling England versus France showdown in front of a global audience. There are also other big names who could be featured on the card depending on outcomes over the summer. Khamzat Chimaev, Dricus du Plessis, Sean O'Malley, or Ilia Topuria could all be potential additions depending on how their respective situations evolve. Abu Dhabi's cards are often stacked from top to bottom, and UFC 321 is expected to follow suit. For now, fans can mark their calendars for October 25th and anticipate a massive event in one of the UFC's most important international markets. More details, including fight announcements and ticket sales, are expected to roll out over the coming weeks and months. UFC 318 has taken a hit just weeks before the event, as middleweight contender Ikram Aliskerov has officially withdrawn from his scheduled bout due to a broken big toe suffered during a sparring session. The injury, shared by Aliskerov via Instagram on Tuesday, showed a training mishap that forced him out of his planned July 19th clash with Bruno Ferreira. Aliskerov, who holds notable losses only to Khamzat Chimaev and Robert Whittaker, expressed his disappointment. "I was in great shape. Unfortunately, trouble happens. I have to withdraw from the fight on July 19th due to a broken toe. I'll be back very soon." While the main card for UFC 318, including Dustin Poirier's retirement bout against BMF champion Max Holloway, remains intact, this prelim shakeup is a setback for the middleweight division. As of now, it's unclear whether Ferreira will receive a replacement opponent or be removed from the event entirely. UFC 318 is scheduled to take place in New Orleans, Louisiana on July 19th, marking a high-stakes and emotionally charged event centered around Poirier's farewell from the octagon. More updates on a potential replacement for Aliskerov or a new matchup for Ferreira are expected in the coming days. Dricus du Plessis just stirred the UFC world with some unexpected news. According to the reigning middleweight champ, Paddy Pimblett and Justin Gaethje are set to square off at UFC 319, and it's coming fast. Du Plessis, who headlines the August 16th event in Chicago against undefeated Khamzat Chimaev, casually dropped the bomb in a recent video circulating on social media. "Co-main event is Paddy Pimblett and Justin Gaethje," he said. "That's an awesome fight. Awesome fight." Coming from the man sitting atop the main event, the claim holds some weight. If du Plessis is in the loop on the card structure, there's a strong chance this matchup is legit, even if the UFC hasn't made anything official yet. If true, it throws a major wrench into what fans were expecting. Just days ago at UFC 317, Pimblet stormed into the octagon for a face-off with newly crowned lightweight champ Ilia Topuria following his brutal KO win over Charles Oliveira. That showdown suggested the UFC was lining up Pimblet as Topuria's first title challenger. However, UFC CEO Dana White quickly shut down that narrative. "That's not the fight," he said post-fight. "It shouldn't happen." He went further, calling the face-off a mistake and brushing it off as a poor call. White's comments sparked confusion. But now, with du Plessis claiming Pimblet versus Gaethje is already booked for UFC 319, the picture starts to shift. Still, this supposed co-main throws up more questions. Most notably, what happened to Gaethje's recent declaration that he wouldn't fight again unless it was for the title? Stepping into the cage with Pimblet, a rising star, yes, but not a top 5 lightweight, would appear to go against that. If the fight is happening, it could mean Gaethje sees Pimblet as a high-profile payday. Or, it might suggest the UFC is positioning the winner for a title shot later this year. With UFC 319 just weeks away, the truth will come out soon enough. But if this clash goes down as du Plessis says, it might be one of the wildest and most marketable co-mains of 2024. Alexandre Pantoya has made it clear that he sees Joshua Van not only as the next challenger for his UFC flyweight title, but also as a mirror of his own early journey, a hungry, driven fighter entering the biggest moment of his young career. Speaking after his third-round submission win over Kai Kara France at UFC 317, Pantoja praised Van's performance on the same night, where the 23-year-old earned a unanimous decision win over Brandon Royval in a back-and-forth thriller that may have earned him a title shot. "Joshua Van reminds me of a younger Pantoja," the reigning flyweight champion said. "When I was 23, I was working in a restaurant, cleaning dishes. This guy is 23, gonna fight for the belt, for the world championship. I think this guy is going to be my toughest challenger." Pantoja's admiration wasn't just nostalgic, it was strategic. He noted that Van fights with maturity and composure, avoiding the wars that Pantoja himself engaged in early in his career. With 35 professional fights under his belt, Pantoja emphasized that his time in grueling matchups has taken a toll, and now the UFC is offering him a new generation of opponent, one he's excited and motivated to prepare for. "Everybody wants to see the new generation rematch from me," he continued. "I want to fight with that guy too. I want that challenger, a new blood, a new kid, very hungry. He defends all the takedowns, he beat Bruno Silva in his last fight, and he had the opportunity to fight the #1 contender Royval, and did an amazing job. Even in victory, Pantoja shows the mindset of a true veteran, already looking ahead, already training. Monday, I'll be back in the gym," he said. "My coach knows I'm not the champion of the world anymore. I'm the challenger. I know who's my opponent, and I know what I want. I want this belt again." The remarks underline how Pantoja's success has never led to complacency. At 34, he remains relentless in pursuit of improvement, and sees in Van the type of challenge that will test him at this stage of his reign. Now nearly 2 years into his run as UFC flyweight champion, Pantoja has established himself as one of the division's most dominant title holders. His recent win over Kara France marked his 4th successful defense, second only to Demetrius "Mighty Mouse" Johnson in UFC flyweight history. Pantoja had previously called out Johnson after his UFC 310 win over Kai Asakura, hoping for a legacy-defining matchup. But after UFC 317, he admitted that fight may no longer make sense, not because Johnson lacks greatness, but because the division has evolved to an entirely new level. He said he's retired, he's not coming back, Pantoja said of Johnson. Maybe it's not good for him to come back because the flyweight division right now is so different. This high level is different. I respect all the guys opening the doors for us, but right now, especially in my division, you have the whole world in the same division. Pantoja went on to highlight the international nature of the flyweight top 10. You have guys from the whole world: Japan, Africa, Brazil, Russia, Australia, New Zealand. That's so amazing to be part of that. As the division continues to deepen and evolve, Pantoja sees his legacy not just in his title defenses, but in the caliber of fighters he faces. And with Joshua Van surging into contention as a dynamic, young prospect, the UFC appears poised to deliver another high-stakes, high-skill flyweight title clash that embodies everything Pantoja believes the division has become. Former UFC heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier, now a color commentator for select UFC pay-per-view and fight night events, recently had an unfortunate experience involving his brand new truck. After flying to Las Vegas for UFC 317, Cormier left his newly purchased vehicle parked at the San Jose airport. Upon returning, he discovered that his truck had been stolen. In a video posted on social media, Cormier shared the story. "Last week, I kind of thought I've had the same vehicle since 2018, driving Raptors over and over, so I changed the car. I thought, okay, be cool to get a different vehicle. However, things took a turn for the worse. I get back from UFC 317. I'm going up and down looking for my car. They tell me my car was driven out of the parking structure on Thursday night. Somebody stole my truck at the San Jose airport. God damn it. Unbelievable. This type of vehicle theft isn't unheard of, as one fan recalled a similar experience from 1992, losing their car at a bowling alley and wandering the parking lot confused about where they had parked. Hopefully, Cormier's truck will be recovered soon, and he can get back to enjoying his new ride. Fans and fellow fighters alike are keeping their fingers crossed for a speedy resolution. Gregory Rodriguez has faced a significant amount of criticism following his brutal knockout victory at UFC 317. But the Brazilian middleweight doesn't seem the least bit bothered by the backlash. Rodriguez competed on the event's undercard, where he took on Jack Hermansson, a well-established veteran and a consistent presence in the middleweight top 15 rankings. This fight was pivotal for Rodriguez, especially after he suffered a setback earlier this year, losing to Jared Cannonier in his first bout against a ranked opponent. His performance at UFC 317, therefore, was not only about bouncing back, but about sending a message, and he did so in emphatic fashion. Toward the end of the first round, Rodriguez unleashed a blistering left hook that floored Hermansson instantly. The impact was so severe that Hermansson was rendered completely unconscious. However, what followed immediately after the knockout became a source of controversy. Before the referee could intervene to stop the fight, Rodriguez threw a vicious ground strike on the clearly incapacitated Hermansson. This follow-up blow sparked an intense wave of criticism on social media and MMA circles, with many fans and analysts labeling Rodriguez's actions as excessively harsh and borderline barbaric. Despite the negative reaction, Rodriguez remains unapologetic. In a candid post-fight press conference, he addressed the backlash head-on, making it clear that he stands by his actions inside the octagon. "First of all, I don't care what the people think," Rodriguez said plainly. "When you go inside the cage, we sign the contract, we're able to do everything. If it was on the other side, and he did the same, why am I going to be mad with him? He did his job, I hope he's okay. He's a warrior like me, but I'm not gonna stop until the ref says to stop. I just did my job. That's what I do. That's what he does. It is what it is. It was my night." Rodriguez's stance is rooted in the brutal realities of MMA. Fighters agree to a set of rules and dangers when they step into the cage, and until the referee officially ends the fight, the battle continues. Rodriguez emphasizes that he simply followed through on what he was contracted to do and what he believes is expected of a fighter in his position. While many fans and critics may find this explanation unsatisfactory or even harsh, the silver lining in the situation is that Jack Hermansson was able to recover after the bout and was seen backstage post-fight, indicating that despite the savage finish, the veteran fighter was not seriously harmed. In the end, Rodriguez's knockout and his unapologetic response underscore the brutal, no-nonsense nature of the sport, where fighters often have to make split-second decisions in the heat of the moment. Whether or not people agree with his actions, it's clear Rodriguez is fully committed to his path and unafraid to do whatever it takes to secure victory. This moment might polarize fans, but it also cements Rodriguez as a fierce and relentless competitor willing to push boundaries in pursuit of success. Dustin Poirier will fight for the final time at UFC 318, headlining the event in his home state of Louisiana against longtime rival Max Holloway. This will be the third meeting between the two fighters, with Poirier previously winning both matchups, in 2012 and again in 2019. UFC 318 marks a full-circle moment for The Diamond, who has announced this bout will be his retirement fight. Beyond closing the book on a remarkable career, Poirier also has the chance to etch his name deeper into the UFC history books with a potential record-breaking performance. Currently, Poirier is tied with Drew Dober for the most knockouts in the UFC's lightweight division history, with 9. A KO or TKO victory at UFC 318 would make him the sole record holder with 10 finishes at 155 pounds. Dober, who hasn't fought since a string of recent losses, appears unlikely to add to his tally, leaving the door wide open for Poirier to seize the top spot. Poirier's last victory was a spectacular knockout over Benoit Saint-Denis at UFC 299, which not only reaffirmed his elite striking, but also gave him momentum heading into his final fight. A victory over Holloway, especially by knockout, would not only grant him the record, but provide a storybook ending to one of the most beloved careers in modern MMA. Holloway, meanwhile, is looking to spoil Poirier's send-off. Although primarily known as a featherweight, Blessed has had a notable impact at lightweight and will be motivated to avenge his 2 previous losses to Poirier. Most recently, Holloway delivered a career highlight KO of Justin Gaethje at UFC 300, showing he still has world-class firepower. A victory over Poirier would not only level the score but further elevate Holloway's own legacy as a 2-division contender. UFC 318, taking place on July 19, 2025, in New Orleans, is set to be a highly emotional and historic event. It will be remembered not only for Dustin Poirier's final walk to the octagon, but also for the potential rewriting of UFC record books. If Poirier can secure his 10th lightweight knockout, he'll retire as the most prolific finisher in divisional history, a perfect ending for a warrior who has given everything to the sport.